COVID-19 positive cases have surpassed 5,000 for a country with a population of under 400,000. Yet the health crisis isn't the only potential catastrophe on our hands. Welcome to On the Record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. The healthcare system has been pushed to the limit, and as far as we can tell, the worst may still be yet to come. We've heard that November 1st is the anticipated reopening of our tourism industry, but what will that look like? The growing national debt and endless borrowing continues. Where and how will it all end? Tonight, on the record, we will sit with an economist and small business owners to discuss the future of the economy. Stay tuned. Our conversation begins on the other side of this break. So the project really pays itself back.
Correct.
The setup,
Not the conference, more the school.
As a journalist, I always have to focus on the facts, and sometimes that means going to investigate for myself. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. right here on RTV. You're watching On the Record. Tonight we discuss the future of our economy. Not long after our very first case, businesses were forced to close for extended periods, furlough employees, and in some instances close their doors for good. And around the world, the story is much the same. My guest for this portion of tonight's show is the founder and principal of Sumner Strategic Partners and well-known economist, Mr. Edison Sumner. Edison, welcome back to On the Record.
It's always a pleasure, Jerome. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's get started by talking about what the economy looks like in layman's terms. If you can just put that into context for us so we understand where we are as a country economically.
In layman's terms, we're limping. That is as layman as I can put it. We are in I think we're in a close to a deleterious state. We have certainly got our share of issues that we've got to resolve, not only with dealing with COVID, but remember we were already in a bit of a tailspin coming out of Dorian the year before. And while we're in the process of trying to get into place of rebounding from Dorian, then came COVID. So we were dealing essentially with a double-headed monster and attacking the economy. So we were already having some difficult times. We already had it to a case where the government was having some challenges meeting their fiscal budgets, and we saw the rise of our deficits with increased borrowings and spending and the rest of it. So we were in a bad state before, but COVID really exacerbated that to a great degree, and has caused us now to be in a place economically that we've never really been in before. So just speaking in very basic, fundamental layman's terms, we are limping, we are wounded, and we need some serious, urgent care to get ourselves not only back on track, because getting back on track means getting us back to where we were prior to COVID or between Dorian and COVID, but the road to recovery in putting us into a better state is going to be a very arduous one. And so it's going to be a long road ahead for us.
What kinds of things are we seeing in this economy that we've never seen before? You said we're in a place that we've never been before. But what kinds of things are there that we're seeing that we've never had to deal with before and are most alarming at this point?
Well, the very first thing is we've never seen this level of joblessness before. Our jobless rates now are tipping 50%. Some areas of the country it may be even higher than that. We are seeing high levels of deficits within our fiscal budgets. We are seeing unprecedented number of business closures, involuntary closures, and these closures are not due simply to these businesses not being able to perform properly, but the closures are due to the fact that they were ordered closed because of the COVID-19 and practicing all of the various health protocols, including social distancing. So we were put into a state where businesses were forced to close. We've never been at this place before where businesses were actually required to close involuntarily. And the closure was not due to the economy, but the economy has been impacted by the closures. So when we look at that, also, we've never seen this level of non-tourist arrivals into the country. We are at a place now going on to 7-8 months where we have not seen any significant arrivals, air or sea arrivals of tourists coming into the country. And so because of that, the foreign currency reserves have been impacted, meaning that we're not getting in the volume of US dollars that we were accustomed to based on the 7+ million visitors who came into our country last year, which was record numbers. So imagine that we would have had record numbers of tourists coming in 1 year, and in the following year, then we're devastated by having hardly any tourists coming in after March of 2020. So the issues we're dealing with now are unprecedented. There is no real rule book for this. There's no script that we can follow. There is no benchmark that we can reference. So everyone around the world right now essentially are going after looking at what are the innovative ideas and approaches that various governments and countries and companies, private sector and otherwise, are able to take to be able to mitigate against any further losses on their businesses, on the economy. The other thing that we've never seen at this level before was the level, we talk about the high levels of unemployment, but coinciding with that would be the extremely high levels of persons who have been claiming unemployment benefits from the National Insurance Board. That's been a heavy blow to the NIB. And the other one that I think, when you look at it from purely a social perspective, is that I don't think, certainly not in my lifetime, and I'm a little over 50 years old now, but not in my lifetime, have I ever seen a national food drive. I've never seen in this country where there are multitudes of persons who are lining up at the various food distribution centers, looking to get a meal, to feed themselves, their family, to collect groceries, etc. So that again is unprecedented. The amount of funds that the government has been spending to the tune of $1 million a week to feed the population is an unprecedented thing in our community, in our country. So there are many firsts that we're dealing with, and none of these are easy things to deal with. All of them require all hands on deck and having people engaged and involved at every level of the community to ensure that we can mitigate the full effect and sting of this COVID-19 pandemic.
Edison, it's a grim picture from where we sit. But, and I say it all the time, this is not a picture that is unique to the Bahamas. I want to talk about the world context and what the rest of the world is also facing. Right next to in the United States, I would have seen this morning before coming in to do this show, the new jobless numbers in the United States. Again, unprecedented numbers there. But let's look at the world economy now for a moment and what the rest of the world is facing.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is something, like I said, that no leader in the modern world has faced before. Although issues that relate to poverty, malnutrition, limited access to good health care, to good social services, are things that some countries are accustomed to having to deal with, particularly those who may be in more of the eastern parts and South American type countries. But we certainly would not have seen that level of dependency in this region. If you look around, let's look at the United States, for example. They have been impacted severely also by this pandemic. Their jobless numbers are unprecedented, off the charts. Their number of business closures are also very, in and of itself, represents a bit of a social pandemic. We've seen the same thing happening in Canada, who is another great friend of the Bahamas, where they have been closing their restaurants. They've closed their universities that many of our students attend, including my own son. And they've been closing a lot of businesses because of the fear of contracting this virus and having it transmitted one person to another by the various means of transmission. So the world over, when you hear countries like France and Great Britain, other large first world economies and very large operations around the world who are now complaining and saying that, hey, we have been impacted, our economies now are on a downward spiral, our projections for economic growth, GDP growth has been severely hampered by these global activities, then certainly the Bahamas is not alone. We are in the company of not only of developing states like ourselves, but we are in the company of the developed countries who are facing the very same challenges that we are. The only difference being really, the only difference now really is that some of the developed economies might have access to greater resources to help manage their situation that some of our smaller developing states may not have. But certainly we're all exposed to the same level of risk to our economy and to our social infrastructure.
Two things very quickly. When we all find ourselves in the same boat, does that make our circumstances any better or any worse? When you look around and everybody's facing the same issue, I mean, what does that mean for us?
Well, see, this is where I would differ with that comment. We're not in the same boat. We may be in the same ocean. We are facing the same challenges, but we're not in the same boat. The Bahamas is in a dinghy. The United States is on a cruise liner, right? Other countries are in different size boats, so they are able to respond differently to the risk that they're facing. So if we're all facing the same turbulent waters, for example, since we use these metaphors, right? If we're all facing the same turbulent waters, we're all in the same ocean, clashing into the same reefs and rocks and the rest of it, the smaller boats or the smaller vessels are going to be the ones who will be destroyed first because the infrastructure is not as strong as the larger cruisers, as the large vessels. So whereas the large cruisers can better balance the waves, they can stay away from the rocks, etc. The fact is we're all being hit by the same waves, but the impact of that is different dependent on the size of the boat. And in this case, the boat being the country. Mm-hmm. The difference, though, is, and one of the benefits of having a smaller boat, as the Bahamas is that it makes us more agile. It makes us a little more flexible. It causes us to be able to move a lot more swiftly and maneuver ourselves a lot faster than the bigger boats, right? So imagine that you have a big cruise ship that comes into the port at Awaki or somewhere else in the Bahamas. They need a tugboat to pull them out into safe harbor. They need a tugboat to pull them into safe harbor. Whereas a smaller vessel, we don't need a tugboat necessarily. We can maneuver ourselves out and find ourselves in a safe place. But the challenge that we're having is that, of course, because we are a small country, we have our benefits as being a small country, but there are also some downsides to it. And the downside is that our engines aren't as big as the ones driving the bigger boats.
Some very good metaphors. It really helps us to put it in perspective. But I want to speak to this issue of access, specifically to something that was just announced this week. There's a $600 million bond that was secured from overseas investors to assist with the deficit and the financing of the public sector. Was this decision to borrow again in the best interest of the Bahamian taxpayers? And, I want to speak about the pros and the cons of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, consider this. We are in a state now where there is no revenue, right? The Bahamas isn't generating any revenue or anything that is significant. Tourism has essentially dried up for the time being, and we're hoping, praying and working that it will come back on stream within the next several weeks, hopefully. At least get that process going where we can open the hotels and the travel industry again. So there is no money. There's no foreign currency coming in. Tourism is our biggest driver of attracting foreign currency because tourism really is a trade. It's an export, right? We sell a service that is tourism. So we've got no currency coming in for that service. Because of limited spending, then the government's VAT revenue collection streams would have been impacted as well. So there isn't that revenue. And then apart from there being no real revenue streams coming in, there is the responsibility of the government to maintain some level of the economy as we know it, right? And they have to maintain social responsibility, like feeding persons who need the help and paying for those who've been unemployed. So imagine we're putting all this money out, but we're not collecting anything in. So there's already creating a deficit there. So while borrowing is not always the ideal thing, the question is, and to answer your first question candidly, yes, I think there is a necessity to borrow, even though we have been borrowing and we are highly indebted now. The fact is that we need to have access to funds, and there's no other way to get it. So you have to attract the money in, and one of the ways to do it now is to borrow it. Now, the thing about borrowing the money is that, like anything else, you get what you negotiate. So you get the terms that you negotiate, and you negotiate what you hope will be the best terms for you, for your sovereign funds, and for the country. The rate of the interest on that $600 million, I must tell you personally, is extremely high based on my knowledge and my interaction dealing with capital markets for so many years and international markets. It's a high rate, but it's a good rate for those who are buying our debt, right? Who are purchasing our bonds. So they get a wonderful payday that we've got to be paying for quite a while. So it's not a matter of borrowing, but it is a matter of what are the conditions of the borrowing of the loans? How much are we going to be required to pay back to service this debt? How long are we going to service the debt? Are there opportunities for some early redemption of the debt without penalty? So there are a number of issues, pros and cons to borrowing. Of course, the major con to borrowing is that it's going to be a noose around your proverbial neck for the next 12 years or so, however long these bonds are going to be available in the market before maturity. The good news is that at least it's going to bring some immediate capital into the country. It's going to prop up our foreign currency reserves. But like anything else, when you deal with an economy the size of ours, that money is not going to last very long. Mm-hmm. But it is necessary to have it to deal with some of the immediate needs that the government has. So the question really about the borrowing really isn't whether we should or should not borrow, right? We've been borrowing money for the last 60 plus years. It's really a matter of how we borrow, what are the conditions of the borrowing, what are we able to negotiate as far as interest rates on this debt, and what are the terms of repayment, and are there any penalties involved? So just to put that clear, I think for as long as the Bahamas is going to be around, there will be borrowing. Sure. All the previous governments have done it. This one has done it several times, and the next government, whoever comes in, whether it's this administration repeating or another party taking over, I can assure you that in the first year of the administration, they're going to go to the bank to borrow more money.
Edison, that's a good place for us to take a break. We've got quite a bit more to talk about. Stay with us, though. When this episode of On the Record continues, more discussions on the future of our economy in the face of COVID-19. Stay with us. Welcome to On the Record.
Looking for more On the Record? If you miss our Thursday showing at 8 p.m., join us for the re-airing on Friday mornings at 10, and then again each Sunday night at 8:30. Or go to our YouTube channel and catch up on all of our past episodes. And then like our Facebook and Instagram pages for a preview of upcoming shows and get a chance to ask your questions. Just look for On the Record.
Watching On the Record. This segment is brought to you by our friends at Executive Printers. Earlier this week, the Ministry of Finance announced it had secured $6 million from overseas investors via an international bond offering. According to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Peter Turnquest, the bond offering is the largest chunk of the debt financing, the government will seek to cover its $1.327 billion deficit and finance the public sector. Tonight, on The Record, we discuss the future of our economy, and my guest for this segment continues to be economist Edison Sumner. Edison, there's been a lot of talk about this November 1st reopening of sorts. There is expected to be according to the Prime Minister, a relaxing of restrictions, etc., on travel, making it a lot easier for folks to come into the country and to seemingly stay. And we're seeing and hearing that this could be the restart in some ways of the economy and the restart of some return to normalcy and even a reopening of the tourism sector. Why is that date so critical for us? Should that all come to pass, why is this an important thing for us to do?
Well, I think you have to realize that November really is the start of the winter season. It starts the tourist travel season. We're coming into the Thanksgiving holiday weekend. After Thanksgiving, then you roll into Christmas, and our peak winter season really runs between periods of November right up to the end of March or so, February, March, and then we get into the spring season. So this timing of getting these markets open by November is critically important for the tourism sector, because that is when a lot of people may want to start taking flight, start traveling again. The weather's getting cold in the United States and Canada and Europe and other places. So these snowbirds want to get away from that cold and find a place that they can come and enjoy a nice warm holiday season. But it's important for us, though, as we move towards opening the markets on or around the 1st of November, that we have to be sure, and we've got to be extremely careful, that we do it right the second time in opening the markets, because there is not going to be a lot of space and there's not going to be a lot of headroom for errors and for significant errors in reopening this market, because even though we are appealing to the tourists to return, we are appealing to the hotels to reopen, the large ones and the smaller boutique operations. The fact is that we cannot make any mistakes in doing this, because if we do so, getting those people to come back to the country is going to be even that much more difficult, where they can easily rebook their vacation somewhere else who might not have the same degree of challenges that we might have in reopening our markets and our economy. So November is a strategic date. It's an important time. It's the launch of travel season for many of our tourists, and it represents one of the peaks in our tourism season. So it's very important for us to open on around November 1st, but we've got to get it right the next time we do this.
And there's this ongoing battle almost between the health concerns and the economic concerns. We would have seen reports where health officials are calling for more lockdowns. Prime Minister says it's all about balance. Folks on the business side are saying we can't continue down this road. My question in regards to this has to do with confidence in coming to the country. When we look at Wednesday, the dashboard coming up, 172 new cases. We still have over 2,000 active cases. The rate continues to climb in the spread. Is there that confidence that the Bahamas is a safe place to come? And I think that worked in our favor the first time when we reopened. People were, comfortable with the idea of coming. But, what is the view of the Bahamas as a safe place to come and visit?
Well, at the moment, unfortunately, the Bahamas does not have that reputation of being a safe place to visit. And that is by virtue of some announcements that were published just yesterday, where Europeans were being advised that the Bahamas and a few other countries were taken off of their exemptions list, whereas if you were to visit this country and several other countries, when you return to Europe, European countries, you'd be required to quarantine for a period of time. But I'm glad you raised the issue of the dashboards, because I have some personal concerns about the dashboards that I've expressed already to the authorities. But I'm concerned that I don't think that the Bahamas is an unsafe place. I think that we have to examine carefully how we are reporting our statistics for persons who have been exposed to this virus. I think that we have to spend more time and effort and energy talking about the persons who have recovered or who are in recovery. I think we ought to talk about the persons who have been probably gone through some false positive tests or false negative tests. I do believe that we need to increase and ramp up the amount of testing that is being done presently, not only with the RT-PCR test, but also looking at now how we are able to implement the rapid antigen tests as well. I understand that there are already a number of tests that are on island that are being distributed around some of the employers where they can actually test people and get results back within half an hour or so, where it doesn't require 2 or 3 days to get results back and spending the kind of money that has been spent. And it's important to do these tests because we need to know who the infected carriers are. I don't think we have determined yet who the super spreader is or who the super spreader group is or who they might be. But it's important for us to get the testings done. But it's even more important because everywhere, every country now, I think there may be just 1 or 2 countries who up to recently was still boasting that they hadn't gotten any positive tests in their country, one of which I think was some in the Caribbean. But every country pretty much on the face of the earth now has reported that they've gotten positive tests.
So
some countries, sorry.
You mentioned something that has really been discussed in a few circles privately, and it has to do with this dashboard. Because looking at the positive cases in totality, it really gives a grim picture. But if you come down on that and you look at recovered cases, it gives you a little better picture and a more positive picture, pardon the pun,
absolutely,
as to what the situation is. But that's not what's being propagated and that's not what's being pushed.
And that is my problem, Jerome. That is my chief issue right now with the dashboard. And that is, and like I said, I've already expressed this to the people in charge. And I saw that after we had made some interventions, that there were some adjustments in the reporting, at least in the headlines. But we have to, if you want to send a message out to the world and to Bahamians, residents and citizens, that we are putting a handle on this. Yes, this is something that I believe that we have a capacity issue. I think we have a capacity issue in our health services because I believe that they have been overworked, they have been extended, they are exhausted, not only with their own physical exhaustion, but exhaustion of resources as well. And I believe that it may be prudent for the government to consider bringing in resources to relieve those healthcare workers for a period of time. It may cost you a few dollars, but it's going to be worth it to bring in some nurses and some healthcare workers to assist for maybe 3 to 6 months to give our people a break because they've really been burning it on both ends of the candle, so to speak. But if you want to send a message out to the Bahamas, to the world, that the Bahamas has or is getting a handle on this, we have to talk more about the cases that are in recovery and the cases that have recovered. Because when we put the dashboard out every several days, and the big bolstering headline is always 100 new cases, 100 and odd new cases today, and we don't ever talk much about out of those cases, here are the ones that are recovering. Right.
So let's talk a bit about the narrative of all this, because the narrative up to this point has been driven solely by those in the healthcare profession, and rightfully so. I don't want to diminish, the importance of the healthcare workers and those in the health field driving this. But is this now are we at a point now where we need to begin to, I wouldn't say change the narrative because that's not the responsible thing to do, but are we at the point now where we need to bring in another narrative or add to that or begin to move the discussion broader? You know, and that's my concern as well. Are we at that point now that we need the economists and the people who are involved in the rebuilding of the economy to now get involved in helping to shape that narrative?
Well, yes, we need the narrative needs to be enhanced. Yes, while we all agree that the health care and the well-being of our citizenry, of our citizens, residents, visitors, is of paramount importance. We have to also understand that you cannot run an economy with an unhealthy or an unwell population. Similarly, you cannot support the persons who need the support without having a strong economy. So they have to go hand in hand, and there has to be a balanced approach to how we manage the situation. The challenge is that there will always be a tugging between the persons who are the economic advisors looking after the welfare and well-being of the economy, and those who are looking after the health and safety of the citizenry. But you have to bring it to a balance, because when you drain one part over the other, it's going to have a deleterious impact on the society either way. So you have to do this together. But we have to enhance the narrative to include now a discussion about not only what are the health impacts, but not only what are going to be the cases that are testing positive on a daily basis, but we have to talk about who've recovered. If we had those who are in hospital, those who are now out of hospital, what is the current hospital population for persons with COVID? I am also concerned personally with how we're reporting the fatalities from COVID. And I think we're still a bit confused about COVID deaths, deaths unrelated to COVID, but are still being reported. And then there are those that are still under investigation. The ones that are under investigations, I understand. But I think there has to be more clarity brought for us to understand what are these other deaths that are not related but are still being reported along with this COVID dashboard.
We're winding down, so I've got to get to this next question. How do we move forward? What's needed from this point? If we're working towards, let's say, all cylinders firing up November 1st, if that is what we're moving towards, what's needed now to begin to really move our economy forward? We've been so stagnant for so long. You know, what's needed come November 1st and beyond to really begin to refire those cylinders of the economy again?
The very first thing that needs to happen is that we need to level the playing field. And I'm talking about politically, economically, socially, and the rest of it.
Good luck with getting us to level the playing field politically. So, but I'll continue.
But it's important for that to happen, Jerome, because what you're going to have is, unfortunately, is that this issue of the pandemic has become a political football. It has become a major talking point. It's going to be a considerable part of the campaign going into the next general elections. And I was very pleased when I read in the news last night that the Progressive Liberal Party has also now put out, I think it was an 8-point or 12-point plan on how to combat COVID, et cetera. I think that was fantastic. That's the kind of collaboration that is needed, where persons with good ideas, persons with brilliant ideas, no matter your background, no matter your affiliation, if you have a good idea and you express that idea, it should be given some consideration.
Good. I want to get you back to your points, though, on the economy and what's needed to move.
So what we need to do then is that there were a number of recommendations that were put to the government, I know, for some suggestions and ideas of how we can restart the economy, how we can improve upon the economy. So I think what we need to do, first of all, is to determine what are going to be the low-hanging fruits. What are those areas that we can get to immediately that will have some immediate impact on the economy, immediate impact on jobs? We have to get people back to work. So whatever that's going to require, and it may mean that the government, through the Department of Labor, Ministry of Finance, and others, may have to now continue putting out some incentives to get businesses back to work. We're trying to get the small business, the SME community back engaged, whether it is to low interest rate loans to these businesses, to get them back in business, and also to give them a good bridge while we were going through this pandemic. So, and the major thing that needs to happen, though, and it is only because the country is still very heavily reliant on it, and that is we have to get our tourism sector reopened. We have to get our hotels reopened. We have to get our hotel staff back to work. We have to open the travel lanes. We've got to open the airports. We've got to get the cruise ships coming back into port. That is where the majority of our revenue is earned. That's where our foreign currency comes from. That's the industry that employs the majority of people in the private sector in the country. So the very first thing that I believe needs to happen is that we have to get our foreign currency back running again, and that is getting our tourism market open, hotels open, travel open, and getting people to now get back into not only the Providence, but getting into the Family Islands as well. Nothing else is going to happen of any significance until we get that done. So if you would ask me for a singular thing that needs to happen right now to get the economy going, the singular focus should be on reopening the tourism industry. That is that's more important than I can express right now, and everything else is going to cascade off of that, and we can plan everything else off of that. But I think all hands ought to be on deck now to, one, be sure that we can get our people tested properly, that we can get our visitors coming in tested, that we can minimize the disruption to their holidays when they come in, whether that is being tested prior to boarding their flights from their destination, from where they're embarking from, or getting them the rapid test on arrival. But either way, nobody wants to come into a place, take a holiday, and go on the 14-day quarantine before they even get to do that.
Sure.
The fact that we are working on the pre-testing and getting negative tests prior to coming in is going to be a very, very big deal for tourists coming into the country. But the singular thing I have to repeat is that we have to get the tourism sector reopened in a responsible way.
Excellent advice. Edison, thank you so much for coming on once again. You always provide us with great information, lots to think about. And certainly, as always, I hope the folks who are in charge are paying attention. So thank you very much for being on with us.
Thank you.
When we come back, we're going to talk to some folks involved in business. They're going to tell us what the past few months have been like for them. Stay with us. On the Record will continue right after this. Hello and welcome to On the Record, and a balanced, true and open debate you've been looking for. Welcome back. You're watching On the Record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Tonight we discuss the future of the economy. While there may be lots of uncertainty about the future of tourism and other sectors of the economy, we know there are still a lot of businesses out there that must continue their operations. And in a world where everything has moved to a virtual platform, production, audio, video, and lighting has become even more of a necessity than it was before. My guest for this portion of the show is the senior manager of the MOVI Group, Mr. Burton Wallace. Burton, welcome to On the Record.
Jerome, thank you for having me.
I have to put it out there. Normally when I do these productions, Burton's usually the one in my earpiece yelling at me, telling me what to do, etc. And so I'm in the driver's seat tonight, Burton.
Oh, wow. Okay. Put my seatbelt on.
Let's talk, though, about really how your business has been impacted by COVID-19. Help us to understand what it was like before, but what have been some of the major impacts of this period we now find ourselves in.
I'll put it in a summarize this as quickly as possible. March was a eye-opener for our company as well as many others. And believe it or not, just before COVID in March, we had booked business all the way out to almost December of this year. We had pretty much met our budget for the year. We wouldn't have almost needed any more business. And I'll never forget it. It was one Friday when the announcements came out as of the shutdowns, and I sat on the side of of the road in my car and watching just cancel, cancel, cancel. One event, next client, cancel. It was devastating. So, of course, COVID now prevents meetings, large gatherings, events. The footprint of business that we had with the hotels, all gone. And it left us at the point now. I spent a little bit of time right afterwards, and it was drilling deep inside myself to figure out what's next. How do you turn this curve?
And what did you do? How did you find, how did you find yourself keeping your doors open? I know that you are still open because you're doing some work, even for us, you're having to outsource some things. But how did you keep your doors open? And more importantly, keep employees on the payroll?
It took a lot of deep diving, Jerome, but we had to go in the think tank. And this process was one where I had to, first of all, examine the resources that we have, look at what was evolving to be the needs in the industry, and start finding these intersecting points of what these people need, what I have, and how do I create a service out of this. And the light bulb finally went off. After speaking to a few colleagues, and thankfully I had friends in Jamaica, Barbados, Canada, and the US, and we had a little group going, and everyone was thinking and sharing. But everyone was convinced, listen, online virtuals and everything of the sort is going to be the backbone and the pillar of a lot of things going forward. So it started off literally being a leap of faith. Was I scared as a business person? Yes, because now I'm in this new environment where you can't see down the road, around the curve, and you have to invest and build out a service, but there's no guarantee that this will even reap benefits. But thankfully it did. So we found ourselves in a sweet spot, Jerome, of creating a service that is now very relevant. We don't only just do a webinar or a Zoom. We've added a lot of production value to an online delivery service. We've supported that with an infrastructure where we could say to clients, listen, we have commercial level internet, we have a zero downtime facility. You don't have to worry about, at least at our place, the power going off or the internet going off. We fold in all of the things that are valuable to corporate level clients or clients that are very particular about their brand. We're adding all the branding assets. We've taken what would be almost a television level production, placed it online, and we're able to deliver it in a multitude or on a multitude of platforms, whether it's a Facebook Live, a YouTube Live, a live stream, IG, Zoom, Microsoft Teams. We're able to integrate with every client on whatever platform they're on.
Burton, were there times that you thought your doors would close permanently? Were you thought there were times you were going out of business?
Jerome, I was scared. The first 2 to 3 weeks, I honestly couldn't figure out what was next. But this brings me to the next thing that, most entrepreneurs and business persons, you have to deal with, which is your own fear. Your own fear would sometimes or most times be the thing that prevents you from getting to the next step on the ladder. Overcome your fear. And that was a hard thing for me to get used to. I'm used to knowing what's happening for the next 6 to 10 months. That went away. I'm used to having some sort of forecast on what an investment would return to us. No clue. All I knew was that, according to all my professional colleagues and all the advice that I've gotten and everything that we could see, we were positioning ourselves in a space that would be relevant. And I just had to overcome that fear. And thankfully we did, and it's been to our benefit.
Were there any assistance programs made available to you? If so, did you benefit from any of them, or were you just simply on your own?
I'm a little bit of an old school person when it comes to business. And I believe if you're already in trouble, don't borrow. Um, if as long as you can keep yourself going without being in debt, do it that way. And that's what we did. So the assistance programs, yes, were available. I'm pretty sure we would have qualified, but we made a deliberate decision that we were going to step away from that, and we were going to find a way to carry ourselves. So worst case scenario, if we had hit a bad pocket, you know what? I don't have my phone ringing. I don't have the bank knocking on the door or some other financial provider that I have an obligation to. And again, it gave, on the company level, it gave me even more motivation to push, because this was my skin in the game. I had to keep my family taken care of, my immediate family, my work family, and everybody, thankfully, in the office bought in, and they understood the seriousness, the urgency, and the need to put a lot of backbone into this.
Very quickly, it was a very responsible position. But what advice do you give to folks out there who, like you, others like yourselves, who may be in a small, medium-sized business that's continuing to struggle or near closing down? Any advice you give to those folks?
Don't do what you've always done. This is a period of change. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. Change. This is a period of change. Whatever industry or genre of service you're in, start seeing and looking for what's relevant in this time, and start creating an arc to put yourself on a path towards that. COVID hasn't taken away needs. It's just changed the type of needs that are out there. You just have to put yourself in the path, and business will come.
Excellent advice. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing with us. I'm happy your business is still up and running. You provide a great service, by the way. I know that personally from working with you over the years. And I'm happy that the business is still moving forward, and you're able to keep your doors open. And most importantly, you're able to keep others employed. That's very, very important. So thank you so very much. Thank you for appearing on the show. We really appreciate it. Thank you. See, I handled you well, eh?
Oh, I could take the seatbelt off now.
Thanks a lot, Burton.
Private.
All right, thank you. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, our final segment, we're going to talk to somebody who really had to pivot in this new environment after he lost his job. Stay with us. We're back right after this. Hello and welcome to On the Record, and a balanced, true and open debate you've been looking for. Welcome back. You're watching On the Record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Throughout the course of the show, we sat and discussed with an economist about the future of the economy, taking into consideration all that has happened. In this last segment, we sit with a local business owner who has or was let go as a result of COVID-19, but started his own business in light of the pandemic. My guest for this portion of the show is the owner of Bull Fitness, Coach Corey Bullard. Coach, welcome to On the Record. Thank you so much for joining us. We don't have a lot of time, so I want you to quickly tell us what was your experience what was the experience that got you to this point of going into business for yourself?
Thank you, Jerome. Good afternoon, and good afternoon, Bahamas. Well, I wouldn't say it was out of desperation, because I was doing it while I was at Atlantis. So it was just something that I was doing. Well, it was a business I was doing while I was working for Atlantis. But when the the property shut down for COVID, I just went into it full time and I put all my resources and I invested in the business some more. And it's been very fruitful actually. So that's how I got um, into it full time.
At what point did you make that decision uh, that you said, okay, I've got to do something to continue to earn a living? I mean, was it immediately after you were let go, or were you thinking about it even before?
Even before I remember getting the memo for March 21st, when was going to be our last day. Uh, the couple of days leading into that, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go in full time because no one was sure what was happening. So I was like, okay. So it was like before, actually, to be honest.
Were you, my previous guest talked about the fear of, having to pivot in a situation like this. Was there ever a time that you thought to yourself, how am I going to make it? Am I going to be able to survive this?
To be quite honest, anytime you're going to venture into something, especially for yourself, and you don't have a safety net, so to speak, there is a slight element of fear. But I think because I was doing it so long, even though I was working at Atlantis at the same time, the fear element for me was not that great. Quite frankly, I always used to say, if I wonder if Atlantis closed or if they let me go, or if I resigned, would I be able to make it on my own in my business? And COVID came and proved it to me that I would be able to. So that's how I viewed it.
Was there an upsurge in the business? I mean, you're into personal training and that kind of thing. Was there an uptick in the business once people went into lockdown, once this pandemic started?
Yes, I immediately contacted all of my clients and I said, look, all things considered, that with this COVID thing, the healthier your immune system is, the more you exercise, the better chances you have. So half said, they were fearful, and I understand that. Another half say, Coach, wherever you go, we go. So we started like literally like the first week out doing boot camps early in the morning, and as a matter of fact, what I was doing was letting people know that it's because of COVID you should train and exercise more because this is the only real chance you have. So that's I used it and flipped it to my advantage. And yes, there is a big uptick in business because the science is proven, and more so than that, just factual, that the more you train and exercise vigorously and regularly, the better chance you have against this virus.
And how have you used technology to your advantage? Obviously, training has changed tremendously. I mean, gyms continue to be one of those industries, or gym owners continue to be faced with this issue of on again, off again. They're open one week, they're closed the next week. How has the technology been able to work for you?
Well, with me, I work out of Empire Fitness in the Seagrave Plaza out east. So yeah, you're right. The up and down of the gym trade. What I do is early morning boot camps, and also I started doing some Zoom, which is online training, similar to this actually, except you use Zoom. And it has affected it a lot because people like technology and it's a way to train safely, so to speak. But people mostly like one-on-one or hands-on, so to speak. And also trainers do it, me as a trainer, especially because you can correct people, you can see and better figure out the workouts, etc., etc. With Zoom, it's anybody's guess sometimes what your clients are doing. So, and I've also been doing a lot of mobile training, going to people's homes, etc.
And
So
do you have, even with that, are there concerns for your safety when you have to go into people's homes, given how highly contagious this disease is?
yes, I use there's a slight fear for me. I use protocol, sanitizers, mask. I also have a temperature thermometer reader. So I use protocol. I use protocol. But the thing it is, believe it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, finish, please.
The thing is, believe it or not, more people are understanding that the healthier your system is, the better. And they're I don't want to say taking chances, but they are realizing that, look, this is my only real chance against this virus. So they're not as fearful, surprisingly to me, which is good to me, coming to their homes or their yards mostly. So it's social distancing, it's masks, it's sanitation, and then I guess I have the thermometer gun that I use. So
Excellent.
I
I'm
practice
glad.
it.
Glad to hear that you're responsible in doing that, because that's very, very important. Final question as we wrap up. There are many like you out there who have been furloughed, who have lost their jobs for whatever reason. What advice would you give them or give to folks who are sitting at home wondering where the next dollar is coming from? You know, they're relying on unemployment or whatever the case is. What advice would you give them to get to that, to the place that you're at now?
Well, my advice would be, to be honest with you, Jerome and Bahamas, everybody has talent. Some people have 3, 4, 5, 6 talents. And your talent is whatever you're naturally good at and what you love. My advice would be to use it and to invest in it. There are several institutes online offering some free and some really, really affordable. Because I took during this pandemic as well, I took about 4 or 5 more certifications.
Excellent.
So I invested in my business. I invested in equipment. I invested in myself to learn more about my business. So I'll advise anybody, find whatever your talent is, which that's what you like doing or you can do easy or you know how to do, and invest in it and push it, because no one can take that from you. So that would be my advice. Find your talent, use it.
Excellent advice. I'm happy that you use the opportunity to go, to expand and not just sit and wait, to go back to work or wait for something to happen, but you seize the opportunity. Kudos to you and best of luck in your business. Thank you.
Sure.
And that's going to do it for tonight's episode for On the Record, the future of the economy. Special thanks to all of my guests for joining me. And of course, thanks to my technical staff and of course to you, our viewers. We'll see you again next week, same time, same place, right here on The Record.